Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of season 1 of the Practical Magic Show. What a ride! How fun!
Woo!
Thank you, Leon, for being here to wrap in the season. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's like the holidays, so I literally almost went into like Christmas caroling in my head, ringing in the season.
Oh, yeah. This is fantastic. End of the season wrap up show. What an honor.
Yeah, it's so, and honestly, it had to be you. It had to be you. When I reflected back on how I wanted to conclude such an awesome, magical season and magical year, our conversation kept
Ah,
coming back to the
good.
forefront. So, for those of you who may just be starting, it's a good place to start because I joke that like this is the episode we should have started with in the first place. So welcome, you come in the right time. But no, the Practical Magic Show is the Penn and Teller of the business world, as I like to call it, where we interview magical people and understand how they create both the external and the internal magical feelings of success in a way that doesn't require hustle, grind, burnout, and
Mm,
self-sacrifice. And so, Leon, you're the founder of the Center for Transformational Coaching. You have an incredible book on accessing being. You're an amazing human being. You've created success like in every realm. And so thank you for being here to talk about what our episode today is about. What does a magical life actually look like?
yeah.
Like, I'll
Yeah.
add one last little part that when we talked last time, can't remember the exact episode number, but we'll link it so that people can go back and watch that as well. You shared a lot about that real magic is kind of created on the inside from this place of being. And we spent so much time talking about how to choose that state of being. And what kept
Yes.
coming to mind in that conversation was I'm all in, I'm on board. And I could definitely sense a time in my life where I would have not trusted, not what you were saying, but I would not have trusted that what you were saying would have given me the external stuff I wanted in my life.
Right. Big one. Big
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially around, as you said, the material world that we desire, the
Yeah.
finances, whatever, homes, travel. So magical life often gets equated with a material life. Like I have material abundance and therefore maybe freedom from needing to work hard and that's the magical life.
Hmm.
But it's an interesting thing. It's not necessarily what it looks like. So there's the preface. That's not necessarily what it looks like to live a magical life,
Right. Because a
right?
lot of people have all of that and it doesn't feel magical.
Exactly. Exactly. So this is good for the listeners up front that we're not talking about creating this life of materialistic abundance, though that may happen. But it's a not that that's the goal of magical living, that everything is like this Instagram life
Mhm.
suddenly.
I mean, can we also preface, maybe this is for me and the other people who will be thinking this, it doesn't mean that it's also to its exclusion, because I think the other place that
Yeah.
people's minds go, okay, well, if it's not about material abundance, then do I need to be like a traveling monk and renounce all material things because I still want to
Yeah.
travel and I still want the house and I still, right? So like, how do those tie
Yes.
together?
Yes, that's just it. That's just it. We still want those things. And this is the big fear for people to go on. What we're talking about in the last episode, this journey of transformation, is this idea that I don't necessarily know what the end looks like. But this known world that I live in, and I look around me and I see people getting these things, I kind of know what that world looks like and I know how to get there, how to drive or work or grind myself to those places because that's the world I've been taught and that I know. So this magical journey with this big question mark at the end, what does that look like, is a big unknown. And so people hold back from going on this profound journey of self exploration and change because of the unknown at the end. And I often hear that from people.
Mhm.
I'm going to have to live like a monk. I'm going to be more spiritual, wonderful, but I won't have.
Mm.
And it's almost like, okay, so I simply say there is economy everywhere
Mm.
and there is wealth and abundance everywhere in all paradigms of living. The only question is, it's what does it look like in that paradigm? So we're talking about a new paradigm of existence. What does economy look like there? What does abundance look like there? And it works differently than in what I call the 3D world that
Yes.
we live in, most of our day, kind of thing.
Okay, so first, thank you for reassuring me and everybody else who's like, I want to listen to you, but I don't want to listen to you if it means that. So now,
Right.
I like the distinction. So we've got the 3D world, and what's the other one?
I call it the 5D world.
Okay, 5D,
Okay,
magical.
5D, right? It's a whole different paradigm. So everything works differently in 5D, but the
Mm,
same things are there. We can talk about relationships, about work, about finances, about economy, about politics. It doesn't matter. But in the 5D world, it's like an altered reality from what we know. And
yeah.
that's what we're here to talk about. What is life like in this thing I'm calling the 5D experience?
Yes. 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 100% yes. This is going to be so exciting and interesting. I am.
And my work today, which is a big challenge, is to put words to something
Yeah.
and language to something that can be very ethereal at times to describe.
100%.
So I'm going to ask everyone forgiveness up front that it's sometimes difficult to put into language and terms things that are very, hard to describe because they're so experiential in a funky kind of way. But I
So,
will do my
but,
best.
and maybe if you're probably going to hear my little kiddo screaming, I don't think she wants her bath. But one of the things that maybe we can do is we can try to bring in an example. Like, what would it look like in 3D? What would it look like in 5D? Like, how would you feel? How would you respond? I don't know if that would help, but we could try
That
that.
can help. Yeah, certainly. Perfectly. Okay. So I'm going to use the example from uh, the movie The Secret. Do you
Mm.
remember this movie?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was so long ago that I watched it, but I remember.
Yeah. But this movie had a massive impact on the world at the time. It went viral. And the essence of the movie was that if you use your mind in certain ways, you can begin to create and attract to you abundance in life. And so what the movie did was it showed you how by right thinking, and means thinking in terms of the laws of attraction, we can begin to draw in relationships and we can begin to draw in money and finances and experiences, all these things that we want. So I thought it was a wonderful film because it really, in some sense, helped us understand a certain stage in our living process.
Mm.
The stage which is I am not powerless in life, that I have more power than I'm aware of, that I have access to something extraordinary called my mind and the gift of mind and creativity and vision. And when I start to use that in the right way, I can begin to change my life experience and what comes to me in my life. Okay. But the thing about the film was that it kind of showed this as the end state of living. Like that's the life there where your will, and I'm going to call it my will or your will, decides what it wants and it pulls that in. And it
Mm.
can be through the use of the mind. It can be through hard work. It can be through striving. It can be through ambition. But whatever, I am going to make my life conform to me and my desires and my needs and my wants. And my will, truly, my will creates the life.
Mm.
Okay. So a lot of people sit there,
That's
right? This is the end game.
not all.
Like I've gotten there. So let's shift it to a different, that's I still call the 3D world where my will drives my life experience. So now let's move to the 5D realm. What would it look like if your will wasn't as paramount anymore? So what happens as people go on this journey is that my will starts to recognize that I am actually in a partnership with a much larger consciousness. We
Can
could
I
call it.
can I share what I
Go
think?
ahead. Yeah, jump in.
That's,
Yeah.
I love where you're going. Can I just share what I think? I'll be the voice of fear. How about that? I'll be the voice.
Okay.
I don't want to
Perfect.
go 5D.
We go 5D.
So if
Yeah.
my will is not in control of what I create my life to be, then I just have to like take whatever comes and I'm going to be stuck where I am and I won't get anything good.
Yeah. Good. Perfect.
I want to let go of
So
control.
now, right. Perfect. So now we're noticing where that's coming from. That is the voice of what?
Uh, uh,
Fear.
Fear. Yes, that's right.
Right. Voice of fear, the voice of control, which comes from fear. Perfect. Okay. So now we're recognizing the voice. Now, as we move through this journey of transformation, where we start to recognize the innate capacity of our most essential beingness, and we start to recognize that life becomes this really, truly open hearted, co creative experience, my will and that fear voice of will starts to be supplanted by a very different voice. And let's call it the voice of love consciousness. And I don't mean love as in romantic love. I mean a new consciousness level in which fear dissipates. And once fear, like we truly start to live fearlessly, like just to reflect on that, voice of fear just begins to dissipate. And I start to recognize that in a fearless state, with this open-hearted love consciousness becoming prevalent, I start to tune in to the matrix of life. And it is a matrix of consciousness that connects all things in all ways to the greatest, highest consciousness, to the rocks, the soil, the trees. We're all connected. And what happens is I want to begin to partner with this life expression. And emerging in me is an innate desire born of true fearlessness to become a true co-creative partner with life. And in that same moment, I start to ask, what is life asking of me? Not what am I demanding of life?
Mm-hmm.
You see, what is life asking of me? And I begin to listen differently. Now, here's what's really fascinating about this paradigm is life never asks things of you that are beyond what you are and what you're capable of. It begins to say, right, well, your passions, your talents, your interests, your joys, wow, we need those. We need those expressed. We need those fulfilled. So it's not about life saying, we're going to take you on some journey that's completely opposite to your character and desire and abilities, but we're going to take you on a journey of co-creation that maximizes everything that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do it fearlessly. So here's the big paradigm shift is we begin to partner with life. So my will, and let's call it the will of this greater thing, becomes a co-created symbiotic relationship in fulfillment of all.
So I definitely want to slow that down and look at that. And
Okay.
before we do, I want to talk a little bit about fearlessness, because my sense is that when you talk about fearlessness, you're not talking about the kind of, like, if you're not living outside your comfort zone, you're doing it wrong kind of fearlessness. Maybe there's some overlap, but it's not like summoning the biggest courage. Is that correct? Would you?
Spot on. Spot on. The good. Yeah, so we're shifting images of fearlessness, right? So where you're talking about, yeah, just do it kind of thing. Just
Yeah.
overcome that fear and make it happen. And
Yes.
that's 3D living, because we're still in fear, but we're choosing another voice or motivation to override.
Mm.
But what happens when we start to live truly fearlessly? So fear begins to dissipate as an energy, begins to dissipate as a quality of mind, and it's supplanted by something. And I call that supplantation love consciousness. It is born of our intelligence that is born of the heart. And that intelligence connects to a much vaster, greater intelligence. And we begin to work together in that. So it truly is not just, oh, do it anyway. I still get fear. I still get nervousness, and I can still push myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
But true fearlessness is actually a void of fear and filled with something else quite different.
Mm. Okay, so let that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really important because it is so different. And I think for
Yeah,
potentially quite a few people who might be listening, just just the idea that they could live in a state without fear
fear, right?
probably feels like, okay,
Yeah.
sure,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
which
yeah.
it is true, like it really is true. Can we look at both that sense of fearlessness and the love consciousness as it comes into this co-creation?
Mm.
An example, like how would um let's say well, first, does an example come to mind? Because I'd love to contrast, like how would that look in the 3D creation and how would that look in the 5D creation? If there's not an example that comes to mind, I'll make one up.
Okay. Well, I like to look because we do some work in the leadership realm. And there are many people in this world who are leaders in different ways, from leaders of families to organizations to teams to communities, wherever. So leadership is a really big one. So some classic images of leadership are that we lead from the front. Like I'm the leader, I've got my flag up and I'm leading the charge and off we go into this wonderful future. So that's for me, my 3D image of leadership, very classic image. And we learn what that means to be that kind of leader that can take vision and creativity and make things happen into the future.
Yes.
Right. And then when we switch into this 5D realm of leadership, and we start to notice that organizations, first of all, become a lot flatter. There's an innate desire to not have to be the leader of vision, of decision, of choice, of outcome. What happens is the organization becomes more organic. It wants itself to become like an organism where all parts are working together simultaneously without any one person saying this is the way. So leadership kind of moves to what I call leading from the edges. It's almost like there's this group and we're just sort of holding a space in which other people can begin to maximize a certain potential, can begin to realize something within themselves that they may never have realized before. And they can begin to create within an organization that isn't like, oh, we've got to hit these targets. We've got to make those sales goals. We've got to get this many customers, the revenue numbers. You know, this is so often how business operates today. And leadership then follows that. So I have to lead to that or else I'm in trouble. My job is in jeopardy. All that stuff comes up. What would it look like to create organizations and leadership roles that are truly adaptable to what the people in the organization want to do? Again, co-creation, partnership with something bigger, the capacity to hold a space in which everyone else can begin to move in ways that are truly meaningful for them. So leadership becomes not about leading a charge, but about holding a space.
Okay.
That's a very different image of what it means for me to lead anything.
Massively different. So
right?
avoid the fear.
And it's all got to do with, well, a lot of it's got to do with classical images.
I'll be the voice of fear. So
Okay.
sounds wonderful. In fact, somebody actually said this to me in a leadership training, and it was the greatest thing ever. But this is the real world, and we don't have time for all this kumbaya shit. I was like,
Yeah.
thank you for your contribution.
Right.
So how that is beautiful, and how then do you reach the goals? How then do you hit the targets? What happens to that, even in how the organization looks at it?
Well, that's just it. Everything changes. The entire nature of the organization changes. It cannot any longer be driven by the same kind of motivations that drive conventional organizations. And it doesn't mean that things don't happen. It doesn't mean that money isn't made. It doesn't mean that products aren't produced. They are. But evolutionary organizations see those things as secondary, not primary.
So
What
what
is primary is the experience of every human being within the organization. Is that human being able to fully maximize their innate capacity and potential? Are they working in their passion, interest, joy? If the answer is no to any of that, it's not a big deal. We don't worry. We just, what would it take to help that person find their way into their passion, interest, joy, and potential space within this organization or any other organization? So they may leave, they may come. Nothing changes in terms of these kind of movements, but it's how it's perceived. So if someone says to you, well, we don't have time for that shit, it's like, you're right, you probably don't. And therefore, those organizations will not evolve. They will not evolve because it's all of that, again, fear thinking. Like if we don't do it this way, the organization will collapse or our jobs will be in jeopardy. And if my job's in jeopardy, then my home is in jeopardy. If my home is in jeopardy, my family's in jeopardy. And we play this cascade of fear right down to me being homeless on the street.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go far to see examples of people homeless on the street, which validates my fearful thought process. So we better stick with what works.
Yeah.
And then we're stuck right there. Stick with what works. Instead of going on this extraordinary journey, which is a journey into fear. In effect, it's like looking at what is it all that I fear in this world? And why do I fear? And what does it look like for me to move beyond these limitations of fear-based thought and into something so much more expansive and possible? And what does it take?
So in an example of that, something else came to mind when you were talking about not even just necessarily the like how it would impact the goals and the targets, but something else that I hear a lot, especially in working with leaders, is yeah, but I still need people to respect me, and I still need to be an authority. And I know that some organizations may flatten out, but I think that there's still a massive amount of impact in this, even in organizations that are still going to be hierarchical. So what is leadership spheres? How do those evolve in a 5D way?
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it? I need people to respect me. I need people to obey me. I need people to follow me. It's all connected to my sense of self and self-worth. That's a big piece. My self-identity gets locked into this image of leadership. Who am I? And here's the big question when people go on this journey of transformation into this 5D realm is, who am I without this status that I have acquired for myself? I worked so hard to get this position and all that it affords me, the perks, the power, the respect. Or I'm working really hard to get there because that's what I've been told is the pinnacle of leadership success
Yep.
is to get there. So I'm working so hard to get there. It's like, okay, you can do all of that. That's perfectly fine. This is a learning journey for you. But if you look really closely where a lot of it's driven, it's again, my ego's needs and wants for validation, for a sense of fulfillment, for a sense of safety, for a sense of um, respect, whatever. I need this.
Hmm.
Again, it's a lot of fear stuff again, because what will happen if I don't have this? What will people think of me? What will become of me? What will, again, more fear thought.
Yeah.
So I better not go on the journey.
And then what do you see actually happens in that same example where a leader doesn't want to lose respect or fear or
Yeah.
power over the people they lead, but they are like, okay, you know what, Leon, I trust you. Take me on the journey. What do they find?
Well, that's very interesting because if they're really resisting it, Vanessa, they're not going to go have a magical life, not the way that we are talking about it here. And they're not ready for it. But if they say to me, Leon, I'm ready to go on this journey with you, there is something in them that is trusting enough, that is knowing enough that there is another way, a whole nother way to experience this very same world we live in. Nothing has changed outside. It's an experience within the self that recontextualizes everything. If they're ready to go, they're ready to go. And the work then becomes overcoming all the barriers that have them freeze or want to run back or return to old patterns and thoughts of behavior. But it's also about helping them. What we're doing today is helping them understand this other paradigm.
Hmm.
As you said, the very light at the end of the tunnel helps.
Yeah.
If I can assure people there is economy there, there's phenomenal economy in this 5D realm. There's phenomenal relationship down there. There's phenomenal passion and joy. No, but I'm not sitting in a mountain cave being a monk.
Fair point.
I have no interest in that whatsoever. I want to be out in the world, active and engaged.
Hmm.
You know, that's what I want to live. And so I want to be able to say to leaders and everyone else, there is a way of living in this world that is truly born of an expansive self, born of the heart, born of our higher consciousness states that requires us to really, really, really work with our fears for a while.
Hmm.
For a while. And for some people, that while is 5 years, 10 years, 15. Some people never move past the grip of fear and its needs and wants. And that's okay. This is not a lifetime in which we have to get there. The 5D world is never about getting somewhere. The 3D world is about getting somewhere.
Okay,
The
let's
5D world is about, okay, let's talk about
yes,
that.
talk about that because
That, okay.
I would have to say the number one complaint, and it's not even a verbal complaint, nobody actually says it out loud. I just can't get there. I keep
Yeah.
trying, I can't get there. I got all the
Yeah.
stuff, I can't get there. Or I can't get my shit together enough to get there. Or I thought I'd be there by now. Like,
Right.
talk about that. What is the
Yes.
reality?
Yes. I thought I'd be there by now. I've been working on myself, on my inner game for a very long time, but I'm not there yet. So from 3D, this is a problem, and we need to solve this problem. So we can put our minds to figuring out what's stopping you, what may need to shift, what may need to move, and we can put together a new game plan for you, and we can begin to work on that. And I'm all in favor of that. I have no problem. I'm just showing different perspectives on the very same human experience. So
Mhm.
one perspective says we can solve this thing, we can make it happen. We just got to make some changes, some shifts. Maybe you're not committed enough, maybe you're not disciplined enough, maybe you're not something enough. If we could just get you there, we're good. We're golden.
So good.
Coming from so from the 5D perspective, again, I'm just going to picture this image of everything being held
Mm.
exactly as it is. And I love these conversations I have with my clients when they are struggling in the midst of what you shared, Vanessa. They're just there. They're like, ah. And all I say is, isn't this beautiful?
Mm.
You are on the path of understanding yourself at the highest level of being and what life is truly capable of being for you and you for it, shall we just not look at this and celebrate exactly where you are? You are a tadpole, being a tadpole, becoming a frog. Oh, but I don't want to be a tadpole. I want to be a frog. I don't want this bit. So the 5D world is simply honoring everything.
Mm,
No, there is no getting there. I don't even know what transformed means, whatever that means. There's no getting there. It is all experience.
mm,
Life is simply experience. And your momentary experience is one of struggle and stress and strain and desire and yearning. Okay.
mm,
That is your momentary experience.
mm,
You don't like it, you say. Oh, so you're judging that momentary experience. Why would you be judging it? This is your humanity, the blossoming fullness of your humanity, of the transforming, transfiguring mind. This is it. Why are you judging it? Well, because it's uncomfortable, it's painful. Ah, so uncomfortable and painful in the human experience equals negative, bad.
mm,
Ah, what if we drop that? Just drop it.
mm.
Oh, okay. I could try to just drop it. Right. Then what? Well, then I am what I am and I have what I have and I accept what I experience. Okay. And they take a breath
Mhm.
and the struggle dissipates and the fear dissipates and the yearning dissipates and they can start to settle into just acceptance and allowance.
It's funny as you talk, I'm even like calming down. I'm like, okay.
Right? Yeah.
So
Acceptance and allowance
it's like
of
you
exactly what is.
it's like you arrive where you've been all along.
Yeah. But you see, someone has to, in a sense, hold that reality picture for them. This is my role as a transformational coach, is that it's much easier for people to settle into these understandings when someone is holding that container of reality for them.
Mhm.
So I'm not just reading in a book. Some books are good at helping you enter into the experience of that container, but other books are more descriptive and you just kind of read it and go, yeah, it's knowledge, but I don't really get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the experience of the coaching is to be able to help people embody it through it. In that moment, they are with me in this state. It's
Mhm.
not that they're with me. We are sharing this reality together. And now it's beginning to reconfigure their mind, their cells, their DNA. Everything's reconfiguring. And this is the growth mechanism. And then they leave the session and they go into their day going, right, this is my 5D reality.
Mm.
Maybe a few days later, that old stuff starts to creep in again. The tadpole screaming at the world, I'm a tadpole. I should be a frog. So it comes back. So it's this kind of like, the ebb and flow of the tide. We move up, we move back. We go up a little further, we come back. There's that cyclical element to it.
Mm.
But where we are is everything. It's everything right this moment. That's the 5D perspective. There's nothing else but this momentary experience with each other, with life. And what is life asking of me in this moment? What am I called to? What am I desiring? Where does my energy want to flow? And we start to tune in. It's fascinating. And we live very differently in that state.
Well, I was just about to say, as you described that, wow, what a different way of experiencing your day. It's like if I think about my husband is brand new on the journey of entrepreneurship, and my heart is like is going out to him because it's like it's in a way it's a gift for me because it is showing me how I don't even want to say how far I've come, how much I've expanded, I think is the better terminology because I can see him like every day, just every moment of the day, feeling further and further behind. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not going anywhere. Like, like you can't be behind if you're not going anywhere. And it's just but it is
And he's like, what? I'm an entrepreneur. I must be going somewhere.
But I'm not going anywhere, then I'm stuck here. You're like, well, good, then you're there. No.
Yeah, you're stuck there. I don't want to be stuck. But why are you stuck? Because I want to be there. Okay, that's circular.
Here. I could go on and on. But
Yeah.
it's such a different way of like that, oh my gosh, if I don't get 400 things done that I decided needed to be done, and you just destroy your energy all day long trying to get ahead. what you're talking about is so different.
Oh, completely. And it
What is
doesn't mean I don't have a to-do list. It doesn't mean I don't have a to-do list. It doesn't mean I don't have things I need to get done. But it comes back to this whole sense that I am in partnership with such a creative force that lives in me, that's around me, and that my day is not mine to demand and dictate. My day is to tune into this entire creative force that is in and around me that I'm a part of, and begin to see what needs to happen in this day.
So can
And
you
my
tell me
list,
how that would actually look like in a real day for you? Like you start your day and then like walk us through how you come about what to do.
yeah. So in the morning, I always take time, half an hour to an hour, to just sit. And it's a meditative silence, reflection, journaling period. And it's in that time that I am very consciously connecting with what I call spirit. I say spirit with a capital S. My inner spirit, my higher self, you can call it God, divinity, the source, whatever people want to call it, doesn't really matter. I just call it spirit with an S. And I begin to consciously have a conversation
Mm,
with spirit. And it's a simple thing. It's a simple thing around questions like, what is it that I'm here to do today that is born of my highest self?
mm.
And simply the thoughts come and I begin to write them down just as a kind of a list of to-dos, right? And then I noticed that I've got some other to-dos, very transactional to-dos. I got to go to the bank, I've got to do this, I got to do that. And then I look at that list too, and it begins to just reveal to me which today can be kind of put into my, let's say, higher to-dos, and which can easily just be put off to another day.
Mm.
And I just do some reorganizing around things until the day just becomes kind of revealed to me. But there's enough space in it. That's what is the thing. There's always enough space in it where life can happen
Mm.
spontaneously. It's never here's 100 things. It's usually here's 5 things.
Mm.
And some of those might take an hour, some of them might take 5 minutes. But the spaciousness factor is key, because I need to be able to say, there's a meeting I suddenly need to go to, or there's a person who just now really needs my attention,
Mm.
just needs me to be with them because they're having a challenge in the office and they want to talk to me. So there's always incredible spaciousness. If anything feels really forced or rushed, I'm in the wrong place.
It's
I've
fascinating.
got to look at that.
It's really fascinating that you shared that because I'm just reflecting back on the last couple of weeks, and it's been a very like I feel like it's been a couple of 5D weeks, and I like that I can label it that now. But then there's been a couple pockets within the last few weeks that have not felt expansive and tuned
Mm,
in, and what I'm seeing as you're sharing is that even though the work that I was doing was in alignment, with what I'm feeling at the moment, it was packed really tight, and like there
yeah.
wasn't space to just like be with my dog, and like everything, it just felt like too many things, even though it
And
wouldn't,
breathe.
from another person's perspective, it wouldn't have looked busy. But I
Yeah.
think that's just a really interesting kind of uh what's the word, like quality of a day.
Yeah. Yeah. And just noticing that and not being sucked into the stress and the need to do it and get it done. And I'm fighting that current constantly. The world that I live in allows me, invites me, maybe even demands of me that I create spaciousness in my day, in all that I do. Because if I shut that down, it feels like I constrict and I shut everything down.
Yeah.
I want to live in that expansive space and be very productive in it. It always reminds me of that old Zen Buddhist quote. And I don't know if I have it exact, but it's something like the monk, the, the monk was saying, you should meditate an hour every day. But if you're really busy, then you should meditate 2. That kind of thing. Like when I get really busy, it's an invitation to really look at, what am I really about?
Yeah.
What is the core experience that I would love to be having today? And why am I setting myself up for anything other than that expansive experience of co-creation and partnership with life to bring about my highest work, to impact the world in the mightiest way that I can, to be of greatest service to humanity? That is when I am at my best, highest, most expansive, loving, open-hearted, open-minded, open-willed self. Why would I do anything to get in the way of that?
Hmm.
Why would I think that getting things done on a list is actually better for me in the world than living the way I just described, why would I ever think that? Why do I get in my own way? And that's when we have to go on this journey of really looking at all that stuff, the self-identity pieces, the fear factors, all that that gets in the way of me living in this way. And I'm not free of it. I don't say that right now I never fear or that I never get worried and I never stress myself. I'm not saying that. But I'm so much more resilient in noticing when I go to those spaces is right away, like, okay, right. I'm really busy. Time for a walk.
Yeah.
I'm really busy. Time to go out to the beach.
And say would you say that that feels different? Well, wait, let me ask this question more directly if I'm the voice of fear again, just to play, just to just juice
Yeah,
more.
no, it's good to hear.
The voice of fear, I think, would say, or the 3D voice would say, that would be a lot easier once you're already established in your career and you're
Mhm.
already doing work you love and you already have your own autonomy. What about me? I work for somebody else. I don't even like my job. I have a million things to do. How does that same spaciousness and intuition play in at either a new
Well,
venture where you really feel like you have no idea what's happening, or where it seems like your time and your energy are not in your own control?
yeah. So that's the thing. It doesn't really tie in with the voice of fear. It's not that we can merge this world with the voice of fear world and then say somehow they can work together,
Mm. Okay, keep
where
going.
I can kind of live to the fear demands, but kind of weave in some of this and have this kind of combined life.
Huh.
That's not what it's about. It's about dissipating the voice of fear,
Mm.
dissolving, letting go. And when that happens, then noticing what arises in its place, what knowing and understanding and vision and potential and energy arises in its place, and then making the choice, do I want to live into that? So
Mm.
if we're still operating through the voice of fear and you ask, well, how does it fit into that? It doesn't.
Super interesting. It's making me wonder, like, where am I kind of trying to live in both of them at the same time? And I can imagine
Yes.
there's probably lots of places where I'm doing that, where I'm like, oh, something isn't working.
Yes.
That's
We see it everywhere. In
yeah.
fact, the spiritual self-help world is full of a lot of people teaching you how to live. I call it one foot in one world and one foot in the other. I straddle the two worlds. I
Mm.
still allow that deeper structure around how I live in the 3D world to dictate how I earn my money. But on the weekends, I go to a meditation retreat and I learn about my spiritual self and I feel a bit better. And then I go back to work and I hit the pavement and I do the things I need to do. And I straddle both worlds, not really committing to one.
Yeah.
But after a while, that starts to wear people down too, because they're not really compatible. That's just a transitory, it's meant to be a transitory state. But our spiritual world and many gurus say, listen, you can have everything. You can have all the materialism you want. You can have it all. And you can be totally beautiful and you can be totally spiritual and. So they sell this combined world to us.
Huh.
I'm not interested too much in that sell because I see it as a transitory state of progress that we move through where these two come into conflict and kind of bump up against each other. But the goal is to dissipate the voice of fear and to live into the heart.
Mm.
And then notice what becomes of our life when we are partnering with life. What is life at its highest level saying, Leon, this is what we can do together. Are you game? I'm like, yeah, I'm game because you're talking to my passions, talents, and interests and capabilities. So yeah, I'm game. And we go off and we create something that I could have probably never envisioned me creating.
So this is so funny. I'm laughing so much because I'm seeing two things. One I've seen before. The second I think is just occurring right now. The one I saw before was, and they're actually almost the same thing, but I've been in the spiritual personal development world forever. Well, not forever, for a while before I realized I basically had taken, like, I was on a spiritual journey, which I was, but essentially it was my ego, like, learning all these spiritual tools to, like, take over to its side to still keep fulfilling, like, what it wanted. And it just
Yes.
became so exhausting that I just, like, at one point I just, like, dropped my business and I was like, I can't. And I just let it all fall away. Like, I just just like a sandcastle that just slowly blows away on the beach with the wind. It was like I had nothing more to give to it. And so the
Yeah.
second piece of it, which I'm just seeing now, which is fascinating, is although I've super committed to not doing that, I've been living into this place of like a desire to come from like the 5D, what goes away when what shows up when the voice of fear goes away. But I've
Yeah.
also kind of been doing that in a sneaky 3D way too, where it's like demanding, like, show me something. What's next?
Yes.
You know, like, I'm going to go this way. You tell me the next step. It's like, it's not really, I'm seeing now, that's not really what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Not really what we're talking about. I know. I know. Isn't it sneaky? Those little voices,
Oh,
they're
that's
so
funny.
sneaky. It really is. Yeah. That's how it works. That's how it works. Glad you're bringing it up because everybody needs to see that in themselves, how this like interplay plays out. As you
Yeah,
said, the ego, well, I can bring those spiritual tools over to here. And
yeah,
then I can be this really successful, dynamic, and spiritual person,
yeah. I've
right?
seen
People will
this
see
before.
me as that.
This,
Wow.
yes, yes.
Successful, beautiful, dynamic, and spiritual. This is good. I'll create a website with this and teach other people how to have it all.
You got to stop. My
Right.
ego is over here taking notes. Like this guy knows what he's talking about.
I've been there. I'm not saying this stuff for any other reason that I've been through all of this.
Yeah,
I'm speaking from experience, not from somebody who somehow transcended it all. I went through all of it,
right,
right?
right.
My ego was playing with all of this stuff for a while. And then I realized this is a transitory state. And there is this other world reality that lies beyond. I've spoken about it being this just essential partnership with life, where my will is open to life and being guided and shown and motivated and energized. There is so much available to us energetically, resourcefully, when we open our consciousness to higher vibrational levels.
Hmm.
There's so much available. There's more energy, more knowledge, more connections, better relationships. It doesn't mean we become fabulously rich. What we become is absolutely cared for
Mm.
at whatever level of wealth that is. And
What?
some people will go on to be grandly rich, and other will be middle class, and some may be just living on a farm somewhere doing their thing.
Mm,
It becomes irrelevant because numbers become irrelevant in 5D world.
mm,
Size. I have clients that say to me, I want to make an impact, Leon. I want to be serving millions of people, not the one or two clients that I'm serving now, not the six that I'm serving now. So they're equating numbers with impact. But in the 5D world, again, that just disappears
mm.
because we don't understand how consciousness works. We somehow think that if I influence a million people, I have done more work than if I have helped one person utterly drop fear.
Mm.
So I believe that. I believe that a million is better than one, but we don't truly even comprehend. Our mind cannot see the scope of how consciousness functions, the interconnectivity of all things. If we move one human being into a high level of personal consciousness and they sustain that state, the impact ripples through all of humanity.
Mm.
An extraordinary level. So why am I judging it and saying, well, if I'm serving a million, it's better than one? But
Wow.
we do until we get to this world. And all that drops away,
Hmm.
dropping how much money I earn in my sales pitch about who I am. I'm a 7-figure coach, drops away.
Hmm.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It doesn't even hold anything in this world. All I'm looking at is the essential quality of the brilliant human being standing before me and asking, are you serving at the highest level of your being? Are you in love with yourself? Are you in love with life? Are you partnering with all of humanity? Yes, good.
Hmm.
Are you cared for? Are you abundant? Yes, I feel abundant. I feel blessed. I feel cared for. I love my shack on the edge of the field. Good.
Hmm. That's amazing.
Right.
My ego's
Right. That's it.
interesting, Leon. um, wow, that's cool. I really love that distinction between rich and cared for.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm even really grasping the difference between like one and a million. But I can feel the truth to what you're saying, but it's just it feels free.
Yeah. It feels free.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. If we let all that fall away and we trust, oh, immense trust in life, in self, in this partnership, and we begin to start to see how it works when that trust comes in, wow, changes everything.
Well, so
There's such a dearth of trust. Sorry,
I
go
like
ahead.
you said that because like when we start to see what comes in, when we start to move into that space, more trust evolves. And so I think for
Yeah.
a final question, I'm going to ask a question and feel free to answer even a different one or whatever. But the question is, so can you think of, or can you offer one or two practices, even micro practices that someone can
Mm,
do in a day to move them into a space of more fearlessness so that they can start to see what shows up in that space and actually take that on so that they can build the trust to keep moving?
yeah. Well, the biggest practice that I encourage people to do is to start to slow your life down, consciously slowing it all down. And in that slowing down, we begin to create spaciousness. That's a practice. At first, it starts with learning around all the reasons we don't create spaciousness, all the things that I might be saying yes to that maybe I shouldn't. So there's a question around what boundaries might you be setting? What are you saying yes to because you're afraid of what other people will say or think of you if you don't agree or acquiesce or say yes to their request or demand? Okay, so now we're beginning to slow down. There's more breath, there's more awareness of self within our context. That's a massive practice. You wouldn't believe, Vanessa. It sounds so simple how hard it is for people to do
Oh no,
to change the rhythm of their life. The world moves fast. I got to keep up. Off we go. Let's hustle, 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 hustle.
Mm,
Ha. So now I'm learning to slow down. So this is it sounds small, but I encourage people to start even by paying attention to the speed at which they talk, the speed at which they eat, the
mm,
speed at which they are on their phone texting, like the movement between doings. Like just notice the speed of all that
mm,
and what it would look like to slow that down and create a more spacious day.
mhm. That's, I
Big
mean,
practice.
that's a life and a practice. Man, it's so that's so profoundly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we start to do that, we have to make sometimes big choices that are hit by the fear voice.
Mhm.
What will become of me? What will it mean? What will this happen if I? So simultaneously to slowing down and beginning to let go of these things that we're saying yes to that perhaps we shouldn't, we have to begin to lean into kind of inner self-trust. So here's another practice. Begin to cultivate trust, deep trust in self, in your own intuitive sense of knowing of what's good and right for you, and a deep trust in this mechanism I'm calling life and spirit in its inherent capacity to support and uplift you when you live in trust for yourself and in life. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So that's the second practice. Cultivate trust in self and life, even as you slow down.
And how does that look? How does someone who seems really disconnected from their sense of self-trust begin to cultivate that relationship?
Yeah. So where it always begins, right? We go back to fear. I have this little exercise that's in the book where it's asking you to write down the challenges in your life and then what's behind those challenges. So just go ahead and write those challenges down. What are the 5 things that are most challenging for you? And what do you think's behind it? And if we go a little bit deeper, we start to notice the fear thought that's behind everything. There's always a fear thought behind some of these bigger challenges. So it's a matter of recognizing the voice of fear in us
Mm,
because it's the voice of fear, so subtle, so quiet, so inherent in the way we perceive life that we don't even know it as a fear voice. It is simply the way we see the world. So we have to begin to disconnect from this voice. It's not us, it's a voice. So begin to recognize, there it is. That's fear. I
mm,
feel constricted physically. I feel mentally fatigued. I feel stress. There has to be a fear thought underneath this emotional physiological experience. There it is. I see it. There's the fear. And the moment you've done that, you have separated from it.
mm.
and you can begin to perceive it. Now you can ask yourself questions. So what do I want to do with this fear? What do I want to be in relationship to this fear? That's a whole nother conversation, but
Mhm.
that's the game. So we begin to notice the fear thoughts that inhibit us from trusting, from living fully, and we
Yeah.
disconnect. It's a simple practice. That's why I always recommend, I say quiet time in the morning. It's not necessarily meditation time. It can be just a reflection time,
Yeah.
just to sit. What am I fearing the most right now?
Mhm.
And just noticing those fears.
Well, I love that. It's so simple because you're basically saying to develop self-trust, learn to identify not self and don't trust that.
Right.
It's like
Right. Don't trust. Yeah. Separate yourself from that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very yeah. It reminds me of I'll probably get the story wrong, but um I'm just gonna tell it as I remember it. The gist of it will work. But it's basically that there's a young warrior and he needs to have one final battle to be like an ascended warrior or whatever. And he has to do battle with fear. And he keeps,
Mm.
I just don't want to fight fear. I just don't want to fight fear. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to fight. And they say, well, you have to. This is like the next stage in your evolution. You have to do it. You can't get further without it. So he says, okay, fine. So he goes and he meets fear and he says, listen, fear, I don't want to fight you. How do I get out of this? Like, I don't want to fight you, but I have to win. And fear says, well, just don't listen to anything I tell you.
Perfect.
I love it.
Perfect.
Oh, that's
Right. That's
great.
perfect.
Yeah.
And as you're telling that story, I'm thinking the question for me then is, as the warriors, okay, so if I'm not going to win and beat fear and fight fear, what am I doing in relationship to fear? What is my position in relationship to it?
Hmm.
And one of the things that I've learned is, what would it look like for me to love fear,
Mm,
to love all that I fear?
mm.
And then it's like, oh, well, I got to find that space in me. It's not a heart love, romantic, it's something bigger,
Yeah.
born of grand compassion,
Hmm.
grand forgiveness, like epic, just to be with that fear and just to be with it in this state of presence that is not fear.
Yeah.
And fear, you don't have to fight it. It's not a warrior battle. That's the misnomer for the
Yeah.
warrior too. It's not a battle.
Yeah.
It's a being with, a state of beingness.
So good. Thank you. This is a perfect conversation. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we covered again, like I said this last time, we could do this for 17 years and we'd still be talking, but this was really precise. We so as we were talking, I was just thinking, of all the times and moments where I'll be sharing this with people to help them understand what I think is a very feels really out there, but feels really understandable and clear and
It
tangible.
is.
So thank you.
Yeah. And it's our next stage of human evolution. So
Mhm.
it's not this thing that's so far out there that it's beyond us. It is our next collective stage of human evolution. I
Mm.
don't know what necessarily goes beyond that. There will be something beyond that,
Mhm.
right? But for now, this is an understanding that's sort of on the edge of our capacity that's going to stretch us.
Yeah.
Perfect. Those are the kind of, yeah, goals that really seem to work for humanity. Not something so far away. Now, for
Mhm.
some people listening, this may feel far away,
Yeah.
and that's perfectly okay. Again, it's just the tadpole to the frog.
Mhm.
But knowing that overall, this is our next evolutionary step, join us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Join us.
And
Yeah.
speaking of joining you, will you talk a little bit about the coursework that you do at the Center for Transformational Coaching and the deep coaching that you have coming up in January?
Oh, absolutely. Like I mentioned in the podcast, when I coach, the kind of space that I'm trying to create for people to go on this journey through this struggle, through this evolutionary process from 3 to 5D living. And that's what we're teaching at the center. We're teaching people how that is done. And what it takes is, of course, not just a skill set, but it's our own evolutionary journey within the work that brings us to becoming the person for whom it's possible that we can create containers of leadership and transformation for others. So we start in January 13th, the next deep coaching intensive. It's a 5-month journey. So it's both a personal journey, all about the self, and it's our evolution, and also you could say a professional journey, that we're learning a capacity of coaching, got certification and credentialing along with all of it. So if people are interested, check us out, Center for Transformational Coaching. We do the work that we've been talking about today.
Amazing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. We have conclude season 1 together.
Well done with your season. Fantastic. Woo! Everybody's cheering. Facebook, everywhere else. Yay!
That's right. Well,
Perfect.
you are the best. I appreciate you so
Thank
much.
you, Vanessa. Anytime. If you want to continue, we shall continue. If it
Great.
feels right, I am
Cool.
here.
Fantastic.